All right, dentists, welcome to a new series that I'm incredibly excited to launch called The Research Says. This is the series where we take our biggest, most debated clinical questions, cut through the anecdotes, the marketing hype, and the this is how we've always done it thinking, and dive straight into the highest quality scientific evidence to find a definitive, actionable answer. And for our very first episode, we are tackling a question that I see constantly in online forums and study clubs and from sales reps. Does using a desensitizer like Gluma actually help with post-op sensitivity in our composite fillings? You know the stuff, that little bottle. Some clinicians absolutely swear by it, calling it their secret weapon, their magic bullet for every single restoration they place, while others think it's a completely unnecessary step, an extra expense, and that a good modern bonding agent should be enough on its own. So what's the real story? Today we are going to look at what the highest level research actually says. And by the end of this video, you will have a clear, evidence-based verdict and a practical understanding of whether you should be reaching for that little bottle or just saving your money. Before we can even talk about the research, we have to quickly get on the same page about the underlying science of why a patient gets that dreaded post-operative sensitivity. The most widely accepted explanation, the one that we all learned in school, is the hydrodynamic theory. As you know, the dentin in a prepared tooth is not a solid block of mineral, but a dense bundle of microscopic pipes or tubules. These tubules are filled with fluid, and they run all the way from the prep surface down to the pulp. The theory states that when a stimulus like cold air, water, or even the pressure from biting hits a poorly sealed or open tubule, it causes that fluid inside the pipe to move very rapidly. That fluid movement physically yanks on and stimulates the delicate nerve endings in the pulp, and the brain registers that stimulation as a sharp, localized pain. So from a scientific standpoint, the entire goal of our restorative procedure as it relates to sensitivity is to create a perfect hermetic seal over the ends of those pipes to prevent any fluid movement. We also have to contend with polymerization shrinkage. We know that as our composite cures, it shrinks, and that shrinkage creates stress that can literally pull the restoration away from the tooth on a microscopic level, creating tiny little gaps. These micro gaps then become perfect pathways for fluid to get in and move around, once again triggering that hydrodynamic effect. This is where a product like Gluma comes in to the picture. Its active ingredients are primarily glutaraldehyde and HEMA. The science of how it's supposed to work is pretty straightforward. The glutaraldehyde reacts with the proteins in that dentinal fluid, causing them to coagulate and essentially form deep microscopic plugs inside the tubules. The HEMA then helps form like a resinous seal over the top. So mechanically, it's designed to do exactly what we want: plug those pipes before we even place our adhesive. The theory is sound. The question is, does it actually make a clinical difference? So what does the research actually say? This is fascinating because if you just glance at the literature, the evidence can seem a bit contradictory. But when you start to apply a critical filter and understand the hierarchy of evidence, that not all studies are created equal, a very, very clear picture emerges. On one hand, you can absolutely find studies that show Gluma has a positive effect. For example, a randomized control trial from 2022 in the journal Curious found that Gluma significantly outperformed other desensitizers and a control group, showing less sensitivity at 1 week and 1 month. Another study published in the Indian Journal of Dental Research found similar results, with the Gluma group reporting significantly less sensitivity to an air blast at 1 week and 1 month compared to just using an adhesive. These studies seem to suggest that it works, and it works well, at least in the short term. However, this is where we have to put on our critical thinking caps and look at the highest level of evidence. The gold standard for clinical research is a well-designed, long-term, randomized controlled trial, especially a split-mouth trial published in a top-tier journal. And when we look at that level of research, the story completely changes. A 12-month study, a split-mouth trial from 2022, published in the more prestigious Journal of Dentistry, looked at 220 posterior composites. They found that applying Gluma did not significantly reduce post-op sensitivity compared to the control group. And this held true regardless of whether they used a total etch or self-etch adhesive system. But the real heavy hitter is a study from 2023 in the top-tier journal Dental Materials. This was another long-term study, this time for 24 months, that looked at 228 deep posterior composites, exactly the kind of restorations where you'd expect a desensitizer to make the biggest difference. Their conclusion? They found no significant difference in either spontaneous or stimulus-induced sensitivity when Gluma was used. After 2 full years, the restorations that had Gluma performed no better and were no less sensitive than the ones that were just bonded with a high-quality adhesive. So where does this leave us? How can some smaller short-term studies show a benefit while the bigger long-term, higher quality studies show that it makes no difference at all? This is a classic example of why we have to critically evaluate the evidence, and it leads us directly to the clinical bottom line, the verdict. When you synthesize the highest quality available research is this. The research says that with a good bonding technique, Gluma does not make a significant clinical difference in post-operative sensitivity. A well-placed and well-cured adhesive system is more than capable of creating a complete and durable seal all on its own, effectively preventing post-op sensitivity. That's what their most robust, long-term, randomized controlled trials tell us. The reason some people think it works is likely because it can act as a bit of a safety net. If your technique is less than perfect, Gluma might provide some limited short-term relief by plugging the tubules, but it's not a substitute for excellent dentistry. So what is the actionable takeaway from all this? What you should do in your operatory on Monday morning based on this evidence? Well, my clinical recommendation based on a critical review of the research is this. Gluma is just not something that you need to be spending money on or adding to your workflow for any filling. The highest quality evidence is pretty clear that if your bonding and your filling protocol is rock solid, it's not going to change your outcomes. The key to reducing sensitivity is not found in that little bottle, it's found in perfecting your technique. So here's the real actionable advice. Take the money you would spend on ordering bottles of Gluma and instead invest that money and focus on things that the research definitely shows do make a massive difference in your restorative outcomes. Invest in a high quality curing light, buy the right kind of light meter to make sure that your current light is actually putting out enough power, upgrade your magnification so you can see your margins with absolute clarity, or best of all, invest that money in high quality CE that focuses on mastering modern adhesive protocols. And of course, really good occlusal adjustments. Focusing on your fundamental technique is a far better, more reliable, and more permanent solution to post-op sensitivity than relying on any adjunct that the best science shows provides little to no long-term benefit. Now, if you appreciate this straightforward, evidence-based approach to answering our biggest questions, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications for the next video in the Research Says series. Let's keep working together to make dentistry fun, fulfilling, and rewarding. Subscribe so you don't miss the next strategy, and I'll see you soon.